told, oh, sorry, that's my video track has just run out. But that's a very good question, and that is probably the reason why my video track has just run out. Yeah, that's the reason that they could not continue with my forced medication, was that Sandy Morris, the good guy at the surgery, he's now resigned and pensioned off. But as far as I'm aware, Fingland is still there, and his kids follow me all around Scotland everywhere I go. It's absolutely waste of time, and they took my son when my wife was accusing me of financial neglect to the Super Bowl in fucking London. Yeah, the Fingland.
Well, listen, George,
the Fingland.
This is so important, and because I'm not recording it this end, and you're not recording it that end.
Oh no, the camera just switches to a new mode. So let me just read these things. You don't have to publish any if you don't want to. What are the meaning?
No, I want to.
So this is in German, and it's the Committee der 300, United Nations, König von Saudi Arabia, Member Nations, Britischer Gemeinschaft, CIA, Mossad, Royal Institute for International Affairs. You remember me making those videos?
Oh yes, the RIIA.
Yeah, it sounds just like the IRA, and that is...
It does.
That is the woman that is... She's got previous as an intel person at the RIIA, but she, like Macron and Theresa May, actually worked for the Bank of England first, and she's a Yank. And then you get the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. There's an organisation called Terrorismus, and that is them launching their own terror to scare the people shitless, to cover up the fact that the Morgan Grenfell banking group was run by Bismarck and all the people that we've discussed this morning. And Christopher Reeves was the CEO there, and Christopher Reeves was the boss at the Bank of England, and all of them get amputations, and none of it is accidents. All of it is the acts of God. So oil industry, banken, mining, Versicherungen, handel, industry, religious organisation. So that is the one world government kirk. Yeah, do you get it? And there is Pope Benedict resigning, not from the Committee of 300. That means that he does not have to do a day's work, but he resigned because we exposed him. You remember making that video with my mate Croft?
Yes.
Yeah, so that is, and I started to correspond with all the sad bastards. He's a close relative of Gwyneth Paltrow, which is why she's had to marry again in a rush. And there is a picture of her with Christopher Martin of centuries old play, and he's directly descended from the very first popes in ancient Rome, and they are not popes, they are imperatos for false religion. Yeah, and his nicknames include the Father God, they include the Bishop of Rome, they include the God of War Mars, and they include Fania, which is why everything is so smutty. And there is the picture of Christopher Martin, and there is the statue of Flavius Josephus. You get the Flavian dynasties that are the busy bees of Rome, John.
Yes.
And that is the name. If you look at the naming of all the royal and aristocratic houses, they're still busy bees. And my wife, before we left New Zealand, got about half a dozen down her panties, and it was quite dramatic. It was quite dramatic. And now everything, you get the signs from the gods. There is Gwyneth Paltrow. She's become a Kabbalist, and that is what Madonna has long been. And David Beckham and his missus, all of them, like Tom Cruise.
And they wear that red ribbon round their wrist, George.
Oh, I've never heard of that. What does that signify?
That's their Kabbalists. All the people you've mentioned, on their right wrist, they wear a red ribbon.
Yeah.
They're
So,
Kabbalists.
So there is Ausführender Arm des RIIA. There is the CIIA, whatever that is, Trilaterate Committee. Have you heard of that one? I've never heard of that one.
The Trilateral Commission was set up by David Rockefeller.
Oh, so that is the three big cities again.
And they're the same people behind the Council of Foreign Relations.
Yeah. So they're on the next...
David Rockefeller died 2 years ago on the first day of spring.
Wow. So there is the confirmation that in the Committee of 300 you have an organisation called US Government. Let's just zoom in on that just in case I'm imagining it. Yeah, and that is the Council for, and then Midian Control, that will be the Mind Control Institutes, all of it under Tavistock. And did you know Gwyneth Paltrow was alleged to have been raped by a man called Weinstein?
Oh, Harvey
Yeah.
Weinstein, was it? Yes.
Do you know who the real Weinstein is?
Go on.
He's a mind control professor at the Columbia University. Columbia University. And that is the mind control, everyone in politics on behalf of Rothschild and Rockefeller, as you're describing. And in their family tree, you have the Montefiore's, one of the earliest families to marry into them, and that becomes Ali G. Yeah, and the daughter of Montefiore, that is the people that write about Stalin, and that is
George, that Ali G, whose name is Cohen, and he's a Jew. Listen to this. He made a video, and guess what the name of that video was? And he's in Texas, and he's up on the stage singing and playing guitar. Now, that Baron Cohen, guess what the name of that video was called? It's on YouTube. It's called Throw the Jew Down the Well. You couldn't make this stuff up.
Well, you see, the differentiation between Jews and Christians is absolutely false. They don't care as long as they become billionaires, and as long as the numbers of the poor people are kept.
Yeah. Crypto Jews, they're Christians, they're everywhere. But the thing is, they're fake Jews. They're Ashkenazis.
So Club of Rome, NATO, US military is part of the Committee of 300's jurisdiction.
They are executive arms of the Committee of 300.
Yeah, and then there's one called the...
and the Committee of 300 is it's a member of 300 of the most powerful Illuminati families.
Yeah, so that's the Rhodes and Milner Group, the Round Table, Freimuur and Under Geheimschaften, 9 Unknown Men. Have you heard of that one?
Yes, and I'll tell you another thing, George.
What is the 9 Unknown Men and where it's based?
I don't know. They're unknown to me, but listen to this, because this is important. In the early days of Windows 95, when I came across John Coleman's work, and I bought his book, The Committee of 300, I used to go crazy all over Facebook on the Committee of 300. No one had ever heard of it, George. They said, what am I talking about? What's this Committee of 300? Well, now, everyone knows about the Committee of 300.
But Coleman's been top 2. You can see that his videos that were...
Hang on, George, Dr. John Coleman resides in Las Vegas. He's in his late 70s.
No, it's the same. They just replaced them with a plant.
George, Dr. John Coleman resides in Las Vegas, and I know because I worked there for 2 years. He's still alive, okay? And he's still writing. His latest book is called Beyond the Committee of 300, and I've read it. And as he's always said since 1969, everything he writes, and he's not a prophet, everything he's ever written has transpired. And we're now entering World War III. And I've warned people about this, because they take you to war in order to cover up their financial crimes.
Yeah, absolutely, every time. And all of that is in Greg Hallett's legacy. But he got topped and was replaced by Body Double. And I don't believe that John Coleman is still alive. All of the stuff that is now written has become extremely moderate compared to what the original...
I'm going to tell you something. I have written to Dr. John Coleman. I have his name on my email address. And I know there's 3 words that I can mention. And if he gives me the right answer, I know it's from Dr. John Coleman. And I will do that later on this afternoon.
Yeah, well, Jim Fetzer...
I know him, John, like I know you, George.
Yeah, so Jim Fetzer used to tell us that the new preacher who called himself... Yeah, and all of the topics are different. All of the videos that they made have been truncated, and that is true of the output of Coleman. It's all become moderate, and I don't believe that the man is still alive.
Okay, well, I will find out by the end of today if he's still alive or not. In the same way, George, listen, George, if you suddenly appeared without that beard and you looked a bit odd, I could ask you a few questions and I would know it was you. Same way you would know this is me. I have that sort of...
So how did you get on with Hallett's replacement? Did you talk to Hallett's replacement?
Because I've 2 minutes left on the battery. George, I'll be right back. I've got to plug this computer.
Oh, we can stop now if you want. I just wonder if you'd heard of all of those branches of the Committee of 300.
John, I've read the book. He names every single member and he names every organisation that they're involved in. I've read the book cover to cover.
So how come a man like him? How come a man like him does not know that Merkel, Stalin, and all the world leaders were trained in those places, or does he know that?
George, I've just got to plug this computer in. Just hang on. Are you there, George?
Yeah.
Right, I'm just going to plug this in. Oh, this is what happens when you do long videos. You don't want people to eavesdrop. I'm at the other end of the house. If they knew what I was doing, I'd get thrown out. Hang on. Right, that's okay. What did you say, George?
So how come, if he knows about the evolution of Tavistock, how come he does not tell us that Theresa May and all of those Hitler Rothschild things have happened, and all of that
because
has cut...
I'm going to tell you, George. Dr. John Coleman has 17 books published in Japan that still haven't been translated into English. And if you were to ever to get hold of any of those books and translate them into English, you would find he covers everything. He was the one that exposed the Tavistock Institute in 1969. He exposed the Club of Rome, the Sini Foundation, the Knights of Malta. And no one has ever come near his research. He is the man that brought all this out.
But I thought the Knights of Malta went back to your mate Aloysius, whatever his name was. That the very first, the Jesuits.
Oh, the Jesuits, who are, well, the Jesuits, the Jews basically. It's the you're going back to the Council of Trent, 1450, Ignatius Loyola, and the Jesuit order.
Yeah.
And I've done separate videos on that. And that a lot of this stuff was brought out by Alan Lamont, Lamont. So George, I've been at this since Windows 94, and trying to get people on Facebook to pay attention was just a waste of time. I've got more traction now than I ever have, because my friends on Facebook who will hear this, they understand it, whereas 20 years ago no one knew what you were talking about. Do you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to fold this up, because I'd like to get this out on Facebook.
Yeah, so there's let me just summarise. So there is Salomon Mayer, Freiherr von Rothschild, there is Anna Maria Schicklgruber, there is Alois Schicklgruber, their illegitimate son, changed last name to Hitler, and there is Clara Polzel, Clara Hitler, and then Angela Maria Gelly Rabal, and all of those in the diasporas for Bush and Worcester become Betty Grable. And all of it is a massive piss take, and that is the Hollywood Star Wars team that I see as body doubles in every place that I go to. And that is the massive joke for George Bush, that they are the Fourth Reich in America. There is Adolf Hitler, and there is the first cousin of Adolf Hitler, both sides in all wars, that is Queen Elizabeth II. And there is the orphan parents of Adolf Hitler, that were the Kasners, Herfield Kasner, and she's still alive. Her husband was Horst Kasner, and their offspring becomes Angela Merkel. And that is the little baby that is pictured in my website and OneNote profiles. That it is the launch of Hitler Youth. Do you get it? And that is the Austin movie for Madonna. And all of the pop bands are covers for all of the New World Order's activity. And I was in...
George, the Beatles were trained in Gordonston, where Prince Philip attended.
Yeah,
they were inducted by the black nobility. And when John Lennon was getting too pissed off with it, they whacked him.
Yeah. So that's Lord McCartney of Liverpool, who's now been taken out the whole of the world's story, because he used to be the money lender for Muhammad Ali in India. And none of that is left on the internet or the social media, like the name... What was the name of the massive dynasty in Eastern Europe? Hambro. Yet there's nothing left on the Hambros.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's just amazing how they take the lies that they've already published down off the social media. And that's what Jim Fetzer told me. He remembered that the Bush mansion was Vesuvius when he had thought it was Kennebunker. But he apologised for that and said, no, sorry, you're right, that is John F. Kennedy's place, but the Bushes live in that massive mansion in Maine, and it is called Vesuvius. You're correct, George, and that is the last thing I heard from him. And now...
Here's one for you, George, here's one for you. Hillary Clinton was trained at Rose Law Firm. Now, what is Rose Law Firm? What is the building? It's the former house of Albert Pike, 33rd degree.
Yeah. Yeah, none of it...
All these things linked together, isn't it?
So my biggest hitting videos in recent months, and that's what got me chucked out my safe house, are the links between the Clintons and the Bushes, and the fact that they are the children of Winston Churchill. And that is, Winston had a massively long affair with Pamela Digby Churchill, and Winston sired Bill Clinton in 10 Downing Street. He's not even an American.
Here's one for you, George. Why did MP Nicholas Clegg just get knighted?
Because he's part of that massive obfuscation story.
His wife, Miriam Clegg, his wife, Miriam Clegg, is directly linked, and this is through Able Danger, directly linked to Hillary Clinton and child trafficking. And the reason why they give...
Yeah, but that's the same, that's Field McConnell that will not interview me now because he fears the truth, that he's the he's the Marcian lineage of ancient Rome. Yeah?
Okay, yeah, but look...
And he was my neighbour in Dundee. All of them are able to put on new accents because all they are, like every government personnel in the globe, they are actors and entertainers, like is depicted in the what was the movie where the giant appears on the beach? Gulliver. Yeah, that is Richard Harris in that movie too. And in those movies, it just confirms that all you need to be a leader or a politician is an entertainer. And that is the Muppet Show that Gordon Bowden used to tell us about. And Gordon Bowden is in one of the New World Order bands that sings the song about Barcelona. I'll send you the URL for it. He's on the drums. Yeah, and the man that took me out physically, he manipulated me out of the meeting in Heaton. Yeah, that's your joke about the DC Thompsons not being the Reuters company, yeah, but being the DC that arrested you in your home place or in the caravan or whatever it was. Yeah, that's DC Thompsons are now merged with Reuters. And all of the man that is Rory Stewart, that was Tony Blair's secretary for Iraq, he actually physically stopped me asking questions of a man called John Lamont, who you've also just mentioned. Yeah, that is John Lamont, the chief whip for the Tories, and he's in breach of the UK Constitution since 2009, since he refused to meet me because I've got all his director numbers with Michael Grade, and on it goes. Yeah, that is Julian Callum Lamont, and when you start to release that, they have to change their role in life, which is why he's now in Westminster, and he's replaced... do you remember the song Barbie Girl? Come on, Barbie Girl, be my Barbie. So that is the MP that I had in my constituency, was the singer of that song. Yeah, and the man who allowed me not to ask questions in the hearing at the political meeting at Heaton, which is why my writs come from PC Heaton in London. Yeah, they do not want me to talk about the suppression of freedom and the incapacity to ask questions. All of those people are planted into the New World Order. So Rory Stewart is the great big skinny one. He went to the Dragon School where everybody learns that Jesus never lived. And that is 12 administrators for the Queen's regime. That is Aung San Suu Kyi of Burma. Yeah, and all of them are plants into the English system, so that the whole of the Jesus mythology and all of the billionaires that extend from that, Chris Martin is only worth 990 million. Yeah, it is a massive syndicate of royal and religious frauds, and they rule the world with their cousins, and all of those cousins are world leaders out of the Tavistock thing. Yeah, and that is the mind control centres and all the stories that Greg Hallett told, and I've got now much more than him, because he was topped when his book was still out of print.
George, are you still recording this?
Yeah.
Good. It's okay. Because this is going to be a mind blower.
Which bit? Did you not know that Theresa May was mind controlled at Tavistock?
No, I knew she was Tavistock. What I was saying was, I can't record any more of this. So I see.
Yeah.
If you're recording still, because this is a mind blowing bloody revelations.
So there is Greg Hallett's output. Adolf Hitler was a Rothschild. This is the same family that owns the US Fed and controls our politician. Lionel Nathan Rothschild, Alois Hitler, Lionel Nathan Rothschild's son, Adolf Hitler, Lionel Nathan Rothschild's grandson, Evelyn de Rothschild, Lionel Nathan Rothschild's great-grandson, and there is a book called How to Take Over the World, a Right Royal Con, with a picture of Adolf Hitler and his cousin, Queen Elizabeth II. There is David Cameron and all the massive Chinook stories that we covered, and that was Peter Eyre, and I'm very grateful to him, particularly for telling me about the Shin, because I now realise that is the takeover by the Germans of both America and Great Britain. Yeah, and
Peter passed away.
Yeah, Sean Maguire told me.
Because he went over to Australia because he was a marked man. But unfortunately, the operation went wrong. God bless him.
So there is my biggest hitting video. That is where I ended up in the jail. That is the cross keys icon for the Vatican. There is Madonna, who's a Ciccio, and on the bloodlines for all the families that are the biblical fraudsters, and that includes the Buccatellis, who ran that Cross Keys Hotel in Kelso, and I used to go to their oak room every Friday night. That is the culling of every pagan on this earth under the oak tree. Yeah, there is Le Pen and all of the authors. She's the fascist in France, and there is the woman that is getting shagged by Sonny behind the door, and she's a Mancini, and they are the aristocrats in Poland, and that is the massive linkages in Poland and Versailles. That's the Lusinga family dynasties, and that is the fishing gillies that used to work on the River Tweed in my hometown. And the women were beautiful, but I didn't think they got shagged behind the door at other people's weddings. And there is the Bannatyne Society that used to be run by Walter Scott, and the night I was jailed forcibly and reminded that I must not commit suicide, they wake you up every hour, and you will know this if you've been the victim of that, to remind you that you must not commit suicide on their premises. And I was
but the thing is, George, those cells have got round ceilings. There's nowhere to hang a rope, and when you go in, they look up your arse. So there's no way you can get rope in. All those prisoners that supposedly hang themselves in their cells are suicided.
Yeah, and do you get the royal suicides that for Saldana that Greg talked about?
Yes, this was the nurse that witnessed what was going on.
Well, that is just the cover for Simon Day's children. He had 7 or 8 jet black children on the Cook Straits, and when Prince...
Now Simon Day is the son of Camilla Parker Bowles and Prince Charles.
Correct. So when Princess Di went to Australia, she got to meet them, and she said, there are too many people in this family, and all of that is legendary. And there are the folk that have died recently in the Star Wars. All of them are descended from Piso. That is Kofi Annan, married to a Rothschild. No one's allowed to know that now. And there are all the Star Wars team. That's Carrie Fisher, and the Fishers that were in... Gregor Fisher was in the Railway Children movies, and all of that is the cover for the Doomsday Book families that we profiled earlier on. And there is Bonar at the White House. He's the speaker in the White House, and that is the Bonar name for all of the females since Piso had them as his multiple wives. Yeah, and my life's really exciting now, and every time we make a video together, you and I are able to synergize, and you know everything that I don't know already, and I think we should get together in London sometimes. So where are you?
George, listen, mate. I do a lot of camping. I love the outdoors. I managed to pick myself up a brilliant Peugeot 206. It's faultless.
That's a car.
I intend to be travelling all across the UK this summer, and I'll come up your way. I'll find myself a nice pitch for the tent, and we'll get together and we'll do some stuff up in Scotland.
Well, I'd much rather do it on their patch. Yeah, if you come anywhere close to them, and you're peaceful and quiet, and you just show the images of the culprits that I'm looking at now, yeah, the whole of it caves in. Yeah, when I used to appear in public places like the police station, they would not have a bar of it. They immediately throw you out, and I take my camera everywhere I go now, just to show that they are still behaving like that. And that is all that needs to happen. But it needs to be taken right up to the top. And if you're still on that Royal Commission, I'd love to come and speak to it and make them accountable for every war crime that they have committed. And they've confirmed receipt of every email I sent since 2009 when I returned from New Zealand, and no one would give me a job. And that I'm really glad that no one has given me a job, because I've now got it almost sussed entirely, and that is why the minor names on the Committee of 300 and the Intel organisations, it's just a massive Rothschild-run piss take, and Lord Jacob is getting a little bit wobbly now, and I cannot imagine his son Nathan being strong enough to take over from him. Yeah, and you're probably right about that Third World War option, because Donald is part of this right back into ancient Germania. Yeah, and into ancient Holland in those orange days. And I've told you all about it was Sean, all about the deaths on the skiing slopes. And it's just a huge now. And that is the orange Frieso families that die under avalanches or off-piste. And Schumacher's son has now been resurrected into the role that they're not yet depleted of the male gender. Did I tell you that he actually lives in the Alps in a place called Gland, which is God's land, and all of them believe that they are stronger than the person that made the universe. Shall we stop? And there is that person who imagined it in his mind's eye, and he's Arius Copernicus Piso, Alpha to Omega, the strongest man that ever lived, and the moral lead for every politician that still lives in the Muppet Show. So the MP for Jedburgh who stopped me asking those questions is Rory Stewart. That's covered by the ambassador for Iraq, but Rory Stewart sings in this, I can't remember what the name of the band is, but they sing Ruby Ruby Ruby. Can you remember the name of that band? They sing it in a model city, and they're much taller than the skyscrapers.
Oh, I can't place it, but I'm sure there's people listening.
If you watch the video Ruby 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 for the pop music, the little rounded one with the round face and is slightly fatter than the others. He is the MP for Jedburgh, and he drove up Coldstream High Street yesterday afternoon in his plumber's van. That is how the whole world is surveilled and snitched upon, and he's the one that would not let me ask questions of either John Lamont or Paul Wheelhouse MSP, who was the Deputy Justice Secretary who sent me the receipts for the Trident Nuclear Directorates, who confirmed receipt of all of that, and they told me they would get in touch and see the case through. It never happened, and all of them are still in office, and all of them have changed their constituencies because Lamont has not got the courage to meet anybody, and he now pretends on the social media that he's a homosexual. And did I tell you that Michael Moore, Secretary of State for Scotland, was chased out of office because he had 82 directorates with George W. Bush on the P&O shipping lines for Pizzo.
I remember that, George. I remember that, yes.
Yeah, and
it's just, you know, new listeners listening to this. I think when you find out what these people have done and how well we'd all, I mean, there's no need for austerity, which is enforced poverty. There are people that are going to listen to this now that I think won't be able to cope with it, George. I mean, really, it's that bad.
Well, when you remember Greg Hallett introducing with images the story to Jim Fetzer, all he could say was, "Wow, it's fucking mind blowing." And
Jim Fetzer was absolutely gobsmacked.
Yeah, that's it, and it's so difficult to remember all the details of genealogy. That's why I try to keep it big. And if you look at the front page of my website, it does not need to be any bigger than that. But you don't.
Get that website out, George, please, for the listeners.
So Prof. George Lee's Revelations, all one word in lowercase, and there's pictures of me in my professorial cloak and gown and my Scotsman's bonnet on the front page. But now I've made way for the massive stories that the Queen of England and all of the people that are in that committee of 300 are now totally in control of the world, all of its policing methods, and Lynn Forrester de Rothschild runs NATO. Yeah, and that is the Miliband brothers, and everybody that has packed up recently, they are false socialists. Yeah, like Kisa Dugdale, who's related to Stalin, and that is Kisa Dugashvili Dugdale, who was the head of Scottish Labour, and she's the the cousin 9 times removed of a man called David Cameron, who still has his directors on the court of the Bank of England, and that is.
And I would just like to remind the listeners, George, that David Cameron's great grandfather, Ewan Cameron, set up the HSBC with Rothschilds for the drug money laundering for the British East India Company.
That's right, and I've got a picture on the top there of Sassoon, who was allowed to run all of that, and he is clear.
Yeah, the Sassoons of Hong Kong.
Yeah, he's clearly in the Pizzo bloodline. Just look at the facial images and the nose, and he's the man's descendants too.
Now then, I'll tell you about the Sassoons of Hong Kong. On November the 1st, 2010, I nearly fell off my chair, and this is why. I just happened to be flicking through channels, and I came onto BBC Parliament Live, and there was a Lord James Blackheath talking about gold in the Vatican Bank and an organisation called Foundation X. And this was live. And I said to my friends at the time, because they saw me gagging on the coffee, they said, "What's up?" I said, "Did you hear what this guy just said?" Now, we've since found out who Foundation X are. Okay? So, Lord James Blackheath, people need to go onto YouTube and look up Lord James Blackheath Foundation X. There was another chap involved in this, Christopher Story, who exposed the biggest, who exposed EU referendum fraud, which is what I've done. And Christopher Story was poisoned. And Christopher Story wrote a book called The New Underworld Order. Before that book was published, he was warned not to publish it. After he published it, they murdered him. He was poisoned. So what his family done, they've put that book out on PDF, free on the internet. Thank God for the internet. You can download that PDF. It's called The New Underworld Order, Christopher Story. Everything's in there, all about David Cameron's mind mapping. And the fifth book what most people don't know is on 7/7, which was 7/7/7 because it was 2005, 3 sevens, there was a fifth bomb, George. That fifth bomb was supposed to go off underneath the Thames. It would have drowned tens of thousands of Londoners and launched us into World War III, and that was stopped by an act of God. That's all I'm going to say about that. Go onto YouTube, Google Christopher Story EU corruption, and then Google Lord James Blackheath Foundation X. And I know who Foundation X is. Although I've published it, no one knows what Foundation X is. I know about it. Robert David Steele, who's the ex-CIA guy, is just beginning to bring it out. I exposed that 15, 20 years ago. Over to you, George.
Well, I've never heard of any of those issues, and I don't know whether or not...
No one's heard of them, George. That's why when I met Gordon, I was ripe for this, because I understood the big picture.
But I know that Field McConnell, who's an airman, yeah, and knows that the Twin Towers were brought down by drones, yeah, and the airplanes, all of it is just a mock-up, like you can do in the science fiction movies since, I can't remember what was the one that paralysed the whole of America, and that came out of your region of England.
Are we talking about where 2000?
The invasion by the Martians and the whole of New...
Oh, people thought it was real, and they were fleeing the cities.
So that man came from the same region as your ex-house used to be in? I can't remember. Who was the author?
In Sussex.
It was... And he, I believe, is part of the Illuminati mind control stuff too, because that is the powerful nature of his work.
Are we talking about George Orwell?
Yes.
Yes.
Is he alleged to be part of the intel mind control?
George Orwell used to work with the intelligence agencies, and what he was doing in his books like 1984, he was telling us what was going to come.
Yeah.
That's what George Orwell did for us.
So,
in 1984.
Because I'm such a fan of Abelard Reuchlin and how...
In fact, there's a river named after him, the Orwell River.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
So, because Abelard Reuchlin has profiled the New World Order authors, it's all just the same Shakespearean stories, and everybody ends up with blood on their hands, and it looks really romantic. That's Richard III and all the launch of William the Conqueror's children into the monarchy, and the massive wars of the roses and everything that happened. But now I much rather rely on, and in the right on the border here last night, I pulled up my computer in the hotel and showed them the bloodlines for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and who exactly are the parents of those pair. And the Rothschilds are right through it, the Percys of Alnwick are right through it, and the Mackay families that become the comedies on the telly, that's Porridge, and the Mackay jailer, that's the relatives of Donald Trump, yeah, from the Outer Isles of Scotland. And Donald Trump was a draft dodger, and all of that has been published by the Daily Mail, but when you look a little bit deeper, it's absolutely sinister. They are cousins of each other, both of them descended from John of Gaunt. But because he's in that Shakespearean era, and the plots of Lancashire, yeah, the very first book I read on history was Cry God for Harry, about the Plantagenets. And there is no way that anybody can know what is right and what is wrong until someone disappears that has been telling stories that wows everybody that listens to them. And the pictures for Hallett are absolutely compelling, and that's why I'll never give up till till the British Royals are shamed. Yeah.
None of us can give up, George. We can't give up.
Yeah, it's just absolutely ruthless, and because it's that police operation, Yeah, Lord Condon's body double is absolutely huge, and I was in the G4S truck that his company manufacture. Yeah, he's a director there. He scammed the London Olympics, and Nick Clegg was part of that team. And if you need to know why he's been knighted this week, that's because I keep repeating that. Princess Anne, Nick Clegg, David Beckham, Lord Sebastian Coe are the asset strippers of the London Olympics, with Martin Sorrell, who's a claimant to the throne because he's American, and that is Mrs. Simpson's legacy, and that is the Sorrel that is the end of the spelling of Windsor in the old days. Shall we stop?
This is absolutely incredible history, George.
So Martin Sorrell and his cousin Prince Charles have nearly a dozen companies called the Man, and that man is Arius Calpurnius Piso, who lived in the Villa Papyri and was clever enough to escape from there because they can read the future. So he went to Greece, and they then replaced the Greek gods that I love so much in those ancient Hollywood movies, Jason and the Argonauts. And all of the Jason stories now are about those people that call themselves the Knights of Malta, and all they do is to fleece the entire world again and again and again. And when everything is bankrupt, they end the war, and then when everything is stabilized again, they then crash the banks and create the panic that launches the next war. And I think you and me are quite close to knowing it all now, which is really quite dangerous. And
we know enough, George, and I've got a huge following now that when they go onto your website, I can't believe your website's still up, George. But if
they take the pictures down on the topics that we're discussing, yeah, and that means that they know that I'm going to go there, and it's all the same financial operatives that release the news. That's the greatest tragedy of the lot. Yeah, but even Rupert Murdoch fears the gods now. They got married in the St Bride's Church in Fleet Street, which is absolutely prone to fire because the goddess of fire was St Bride.
George, did you know this? That the Rothschilds are liquidating all their assets?
Yeah, there's a rumour that all the banks in Scotland are going to close to...
there's a reset coming. We're going to have gold-backed currency back.
Yeah, I don't believe they've got the wits to do it. Now that the people can read and write and discussions like this are possible, yeah, if it had been 5 years ago, someone would have stormed into this room and arrested me already. But now they know the power of God, and that's what's going to change it. That's why the Queen would not lay the poppy wreaths last year and this year. Did she lay them this year? I did not see the ceremony.
No, she didn't. She didn't. And
so Charlie Boy did it 2 years in a row.
Yeah. Now, there are people that have said that the real Queen died in 2015, and she did make an announcement that this would be her last Christmas speech. Everyone believes that that's a body double that we're seeing now.
Well, that is entirely possible. Have I told you about my favourite man in Dundee?
Go on.
He's a body double for Gerald Grosvenor. Yeah, and he...
Oh, I know, Grosvenor House Hotels. My mother used to work for Grosvenor House Hotels in Grosvenor Square, London.
Yeah, so his sister is the feudal Duke of Roxburgh's ex-wife, and she is a relatively decent person, but it's quite disturbing that they still profit. She's on the boards of the King's Own Scottish Borderers War Dead. And that is a legend in the town of Coldstream that I'm now in. Yeah, her brother is in Dundee. The lookalike for Gerald Grosvenor is called Ken Hosey, and he's recommended that he's a gambler. He bets on the horses all the time. But if he's actually the Duke of Westminster, he is now avoiding his taxes, and he, like many of the other aristocrats, have vast tracts of land and estates in Ireland, and he likes to go there. And that all of it is he could just be dodging his tax commitments. But because I'm not there anymore, I've not seen him for about 3 weeks. But the likeness is uncanny, and he's chosen a name that is controversial in Dundee, and that is Hosey, and Hosey's now the divorced husband of Shona Robinson, who had to resign as the health secretary up here because I was contacting her and telling her that the drugs that Nicola Sturgeon wanted to impose on the elderly, 60 is the code name for Aries Piso, and when you get to 60 you're old enough to get your bus pass. So what they were going to do in NHS Scotland, Shona resigned, God bless her, but she's on Camilla's bloodline too. It's absolutely stunning.
George, tell me something. There's a castle in Scotland, very old castle, Templar Castle. Can you think of the name of it? It's supposedly where the so-called
Holy Grail.
Yeah. What's that castle?
So that is Roslin Palace. Yeah, and all of that is a topic for Indiana Jones, but it's just the same joke as the Monty Python.
What I was going to say was this, George. When I come up to Scotland, we can go to that castle and we can do one of these videos. It's great doing this stuff on location.
Well, you see, all my mates in the know-nothings that were my hosts in Edinburgh when I lived there, yeah, and slept on their couches, they went to Roslin, and it's a huge piss take. It's the same joke as the Monty Pythons. When the French are looking over the balcony and King Arthur shouts up to them, "We are looking for the Holy Grail," and all of it is posh schoolboy English, and they shout down, "Hee hee hee hee, we've already got one," and that is the goblet that everybody is given communion with in every church in the world. Yeah, it's the huge piss take that your iPod, aka your mobile phone, is the equivalent of your God's war chest. That is the iPod in world history. Yeah, and that is in the Indiana Jones and the, I forget which one, where he meets an ancient king in the ending scenes. All of it is the concept that if you die in war for your one true God, you will be given a massive war chest, and that for the Rothschilds is the zebras towing their cart.
Yes, I remember that.
So that is the piss take that we've already got one, and that is William the Conqueror's armies who are already in Britain, and that is the fact that Windsor Palace is exactly the same as Falaise Castle for William the Conqueror. It's exactly the same design, and because the Bushes are in that bloodline tree, when they made the cartoon comedy about the Muppets that lived on Tracy Island.
Oh, what one was this, George?
If you can relate to Tracy Island, so it's the Thunderbirds story,
yes,
and all the little characters that are in the Muppet team look like the Bush family dynasty, and that is their story as they emigrate to America in 1937, and that's why I'm so grateful to Peter Eyre. Without him I would not have known that, and I always used to appreciate them. Have you seen the massive joke about the Boston bombings?
Yeah, well, it was, don't forget, it was Peter Eyre, who has a web blog called Eyre International, EYRE, Eyre International.
But all of those photos...
Now, it was Peter Eyre that first used to publish Gordon Bowden's stuff on his website in the early days.
Yeah. So Peter Eyre's stuff has been completely removed, and my stuff on the Boston bombing has also been removed, but one of the pictures is left on. What happened in 10 minutes of footage was that the boy that is exactly the body double for my neighbour, the Hutchisons, they are on the American presidential bloodline tree, and it's totally sinister. Yeah, all of them are traitors even to the local fishing club. They sold it off to the Duke of Roxburgh, but they are on the Roosevelt Bush bloodline trees that come out of my hometown and the town of Selkirk, where I was also chucked in jail. It's just massive. So that is the bomber that blew the legs off this boy in the wheelchair, and within 2 minutes they were further along the pavement and the second leg was off and he was still fully conscious, and all of that has been taken off my website, and Peter Eyre's blog spots are now decimated. There are no images left on them other than the cartoon ones of deformed legs and all the nuclear threats and all the false bombing stories. Yeah, I don't know if you believe in all that stuff, but the pictures are less than compelling for me. And what they did not know was that when the Bushes came to America, that all of those families that were with them became Betty Grable, but they're all ancient ancestral bloodlines, like the ones that we saw earlier, the Tysons, and the ones that are, the inventor of the Hoover is Dyson, and he's a Tyson too. All of them changed their names ever so quietly and slowly through world history. And even the cover-ups of the, who was the woman that in the Olympics got tripped up in the 5,000 metres?
No idea.
Oh, so it was a South African contender against the American contender, but she's in that Tyson bloodline that is the massive munitions scandals of World War II and trading with the enemies. And that is the Kruppses that did that. And it's right into my hometown, and that is the Earls of Warwick that are the Brooks family, and that is the University of Warwick rules and Tom of Warwick in the Arthurian legends. Shall we stop?
Fantastic stuff, George. I've just got, because I had to record mine in 15-minute sections. I'm just about to post the first one on Facebook.
If I cannot find it, what was the name of that website that will publish anything?
Okay, I can tell you what it is. It's called BitChute. B-I-T.
Yeah.
B-I-T-C-H-U-T-E. BitChute, all one word.
And how does it
listen, my ID is the Desert Boy, all one word. You'll see this video and all your other stuff that we've done on Theresa May on BitChute. It's completely independent from Google. Google can't touch anything that's on there. It's there forever.
Do you get Google? The owner is Sergey Brin, and that is the B-Arians.
Yeah.
I think I'll have to.
It goes on and on.
Eh?
It goes on and on and on.
Absolutely relentless. But right up to 1919, the ordinary people could not read and write. It's their biggest mistake. And did I tell? Greg Hallett told me about the naming of the word fuck. You remember it?
No. Yeah.
That's a royal scam. That is the royal brothels and fornication under consent of the king. Is that a good point to stop?
Fantastic stuff, George.
Cheers.
I'll speak to you later.
All the best, John.
God bless, mate.
Cheers.